Good morning and welcome, President Toomas Hendrik Ilves. Welcome to all of you. Very happy to have you here for this Thought Leadership Forum, a series where we are attempting to bring together top decision makers, top thinkers for frank conversations on matters affecting Europe. In this particular case, we are also doing this as part of our Northern Europe platform, which we have been running for 1 year now, trying to reflect the importance of that region, the Baltic, the Nordic, the Arctic, for the EU, for NATO, for the economy, for security, for the strategic future of Europe. We have a number of EPC members who are part of that platform, and we're looking forward to also expanding the work in this area. And if you're interested, where's Maria? Yeah, and Maria is the person to get in touch with, or Almund Müller, and of course it's also on our website. So without further ado, very much looking forward to this conversation. We will start with a keynote speech, and then I will ask a few questions, but I will also open it up to the audience, so please be ready with your questions as well. So thank you very much for being here, and the floor is yours, if you want to do it from there.
Yeah. Now it's on, okay. Okay, well, basically, I'm going to probably talk about a number of things because I'm not sure what your interests are, but I'll start with, I guess, and while I was originally, invited here, was that about a year and a half ago, well, actually 2 years ago, an organization called the Council of Baltic Sea States, which is comprised of all of the countries, was comprised of all of the countries around the Baltic Sea, including Norway and Iceland. The leadership, or the minister, run by the foreign ministries of those countries, got together to ask, what is there a point to this organization? In 2022, Russia had had its membership suspended after the invasion of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and of course, Russia, being Russia, said, "You can't suspend us; we quit." But anyway, so this was the organization no longer had one problematic member. And the question is, where's it going? What is the function of this organization? And then for that, to understand, you have to go back to when it was formed, which was in March of 1992, an initiative of then Hans-Dietrich Genscher and Uffe Ellemann-Jensen. The idea at the time was that all of these countries have now come out of communism. This is March, so it's like basically 6 months after the collapse of the independence of the Baltic countries, 3 months after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so the idea is, well, we have all of these countries here, and we need to somehow integrate them, and let's make an organization, which they ended up calling the Council of Baltic Sea States. Now, if you go back to 1992 and you look at the region, I don't know, there's no map here, but basically in and around the Baltic countries, there were two members of those, Denmark and Germany, that were in the European Union in 1992. And there were four, if you count the whole area, countries that were in NATO, which was, again, Denmark, Germany, Norway, and then out there, Iceland. So of the CBSS, Finland and Sweden had not yet joined the European Union, which they did by 1995, and of course, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, of the area, were far away from joining either organization in '92. And the decision to admit Poland of those countries took place in '97. They actually joined in '99, and the Baltic countries and Poland joined the European Union in 2004, and Baltic countries also then joined NATO. Now, that means that by 2004, we had gone from an area that had two countries on the Baltic Sea that were in NATO and the European Union to a a NATO and EU lake. Well, that was by 2004. It was an EU lake, and by the time, and in the aftermath of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it became also a NATO lake as Finland and Sweden joined. So the question is, what function does this organization serve? And on top of that, not only is it a matter simply of membership, but Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, at least, are actually doing economically and are more advanced than some of the so-called old Europe of the Rumsfeld, Schäuble, Lammers view. I don't know if those names even mean anything, but Schäuble and Lammers in 1993 came out with a plan to have a core Europe, and then all the wogs like us in the Eastern Europe part of in Europe and the East would not be full members of the EU. We'll come back to that. So the question is, what is the point of this organization? And so the Finnish presidency 2 years ago, the CBSS, tasked the Estonian presidency of the CBSS, the next one, to put out a report. And then Estonians came to Gabrielius, Landsbergis, and me to say, okay, well, please give us a report of what is there a future for this organization. And so we did a tour de table of all of the foreign ministers of the membership of the CBSS, and basically the answer was, well, we don't see much use for this, especially because we're paying for all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the ministries of foreign affairs. In fact, almost nothing that the CBSS did with its $20 million euro budget had anything to do with the remit of a foreign ministry. So I said, okay, well, that's nice, but what is it? What do you care about? And basically what we heard in all of the members of the CBSS foreign ministries was, we're really worried about security. And so when we went to write this, it was basically, we have two choices. We have a choice between plan A, just dismember this organization, and plan B, which is make it focus on security. But of course, when it comes to security, we have NATO, and then we also have, Article 42.13 or whatever it was in the EU, in the Lisbon Treaty. Those are security based. However, the problem that we realized, and which is the acute problem we face to this day, and just last week, the GlobeSec and the ICCC, it's the International Counterterrorism Institute, I don't know, came out with a report basically saying that hybrid warfare is the real problem that we that we face in the Baltic Sea region. The report of GlobeSec showed that the overwhelming majority of what is called hybrid warfare takes place or has occurred in the last 3 or 4 years in what today we call the Baltic Sea region. There are clear reasons for this, but And the question is, how do we deal with that? And the problem that we face, and why we came up with this report, is the fundamental inability of both NATO and the European Union to deal with hybrid threats, because the term I invented for this is sub Article 4 and 5 threshold events. So, they tend to be all of these so-called hybrid threats tend to be things that take place in single member states of either EU or NATO, and the response to that is, well, that does not meet the criteria for a NATO intervention, or in the EU, more or less the same thing. And the report that came out last week by Julian Lanches and Kasper Rekavec, which is showed that they counted 151 known cases of hybrid threats since February, or hybrid events since 2022. This includes cable cuttings. This includes attempted derailments in Poland. It involves the cable cuttings, are a number of them. Then we have sort of more serious assassination attempts. Just day before yesterday, the office, the NGO office in Helsinki, which dealt with providing aid for Ukraine, was the subject of a firebomb arson attack. I mean, we just see these things over and over and over and over. And but the problem we face is that when you raise these issues, the two organizations tasked with security do not want to deal with them. I guess the worst case of this was when in Estonia, we had a 12-minute incursion by three MiGs. Airspace incursions, given the speed of a jet, generally tend to be 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Oops, we went over the border. Sorry. It was 12 minutes. They just flew through Estonian airspace. When we wanted to raise this at NATO and have an Article 4 consultation, Mark Rutte called up the Estonian Prime Minister and yelled at him, saying, "No, why are you doing this?" And we're like, well, it does kind of meet all of the criteria for getting together to discuss these issues. But I mean, that shows the attitude of NATO towards dealing with hybrid threats. And if you look in the report that came out last week, the primary focus seems to be Poland, with 31 out of 151 incidents. We've seen a number in France, but generally the countries that have gotten the most have all been in the Baltic Sea region. And so the idea of the Council of Baltic Sea States was to deal with this. Now, yes, just yesterday, this is like great timing on the part of the EPC, the foreign ministers of all of the Council of Baltic Sea States met in Warsaw, and while they're not doing much yet on hybrid threats, they did agree on something which was previously completely unimaginable, which is that they are drawing up a common evacuation program in case the Russians invade. I mean, we countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, actually Finland in some sense too, but, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland have a lot of experience with running away or evacuating large numbers of people from a Russian invasion. And so we're getting somewhere with this, at least if we have, a couple of years ago when we raised the question of, well, what happens if they invade, and are you ready to deal with hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people fleeing a Russian invasion? Because we know after After Bucha, basically after March 2022, people aren't going to sit around and saying, oh, maybe they'll be nice. They won't be nice. And so what we can basically expect is if there is a Russian invasion of the kind that they're constantly threatening to do in the Baltic states and in Poland, that we will have a massive refugee problem in Europe of Europeans, of NATO and European Union citizens fleeing a Russian invasion. And so yesterday, they at least we'll see how it goes, but they agreed to draw up a plan on who takes what and where and so forth, which I think is a step forward. Now, I've been probably talking even more longer than I was foreseen, but basically, less the whole issue of the Council of Baltic Sea States, but much more is Europe, both the European Union and NATO, have to come to grips with sub-threshold or sub-Article 4, sub-Article 5 threshold threats, which are serious. I mean, they tried to assassinate the president or CEO of Rheinmetall, the biggest defense company in Europe. They have the train derailment that didn't occur in Poland 2 months back because it was discovered that they had cut out a section of rail could have led to massive deaths. Massive amount of deaths given the train traffic on that line. It is not simply a single member state issue, because we know that the case of the bombs placed on DHL planes in Lithuania. Well, the bombs were smuggled into Estonia from Russia, came through Estonia, Latvia to Lithuania, and had the planes taken off, depending on I think one of the destinations before they discovered these bombs was Canada. I mean, so these things have, these are cross-border incidents, yet NATO doesn't want to deal with it. What it really comes down to, and I'll finish with this, is that the term hybrid war is a complete misnomer. It is war. Hybrid is simply just is another word for saying it is sub-Article 4 and 5. No action need be taken. This does not mean, it does not mean, however, it's not war. It is war, and it is war how it is pursued these days by Russia, fundamentally, though it seems that there is some Iranian involvement, at least in attacks in the Scandinavian countries. There's a group called Foxtrot that is Iranian but works with the Russians. That we have to understand it is war, and we have to mobilize some kind of action against this. What that is hard to say, because usually the action is, well, we don't really know if it's really the Russians. Well, we know it's the Russians. However, we're not going to start derailing trains in Russia. We just have to find an alternative response. And there are many alternative responses which punish Russia for these actions. Among them, ending visas. Among them, bringing down the number of Russian diplomats in Europe to a bare minimum. And we can come up with other solutions as well, but they must follow, if there is a hybrid action, what we call a hybrid action, there must be a consequence, and shortly thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A number of things I want to follow up there. But let me start with the hard security side. You were talking about plans of evacuation in case of a Russian invasion. Now, within the European debate, you still hear very often, but that's never going to happen. Russia is never going to invade NATO. It is far too big a risk. How would you see that? Is this a realistic scenario, or is this something we just have to have contingency plans, but it's rather unlikely?
Well, there's a new film out made by the Poles and the one of the Polish think tanks, which starts out with me actually. And in that little brief section, it's what I say is that on the 21st of February, I was in Munich at the Munich Security Conference, and you could clearly see the difference between the countries of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. The countries in Eastern Europe said they're going to invade. This is 21st of February, 3 days before the February 24th. The West European countries said that would be so stupid, irrational. Why would they do that? You know, that's such a bad idea. There's no reason they would ever do that. And that's where we are. Yeah, you could say it doesn't make sense to go and invade the Baltic countries or Poland, because that's a really dumb idea and they'll never do that. But that's exactly what they said about Ukraine 3 days before they went in. And if you recall back then, it was actually only the United States that was saying, it looks like they're going to invade. And the response in Europe is, no, that would be really stupid. And of course, it would be stupid. It's not a smart idea to go and invade a country of, at that time, still 45 million. On the other hand, they did it, and they did it. I mean, you could make the same argument for August 31st, 1939, before September 1st, 1939, saying, well, that would be really dumb if Germany went and invaded Poland. But they did. If you read what Mein Kampf, you go like, this guy's weird and he may do something. If you read Vladimir Putin's August 2021 essay on like the Russian sort of, what Ukraine being really all Russian anyway, and it's the same kind of irrational thinking, not based on what would make sense. And they did it. So once we're dealing with a country that does not operate on the basis of a Western European rational calculus, you have to take it seriously. When they, on a daily basis, on Russian state-run media, say, we'll bomb the Balts. We're going to take them back anyway. We're going to destroy Warsaw. You just get this all the time. So, believe what they say.
Thank you. Not very reassuring, but I think certainly it's also the reality as we see it.
I should add to that. It's also, it may seem irrational for them to do it here in Brussels, but three Baltic countries and Poland are all over 3.5% GDP on defense since 2022. And we're going to be, at least Estonia and Poland are going to be over 5 next year. Finland, Sweden, Denmark are all very heavily, really increasing their defense expenditure. Denmark, Estonia, and Lithuania are the 3 countries that have contributed most on a percentage of GDP basis to military assistance to Ukraine. So we take it seriously. All right, some of these other countries, they don't really do much, but we can't even count. We're not counting necessarily on we'll just call up, we'll call up NATO and say, come and help us. We have to be ready.
You were talking about the gaps which are there with the EU, with NATO, what these institutions are not doing. What do we have to do to change? What are the kind of reforms, different constellations we might need to address these kind of threats? Also, bearing in mind the changing role of the United States and the question marks we have about their reliability when it comes to common defense.
That's a long, hard question. Well, I'll start with this. Some kind of reevaluation must be made of what is a national problem, what is not, and what is a problem for the European Union and for NATO. For me, the clearest case actually took place in May of last year when Estonia arrested a shadow fleet, uninsured, unflagged shadow fleet tanker in our economic waters. We went and started arresting it, and what happened was a Sukhoi 24 fighter bomber buzzed the ship. I mean, meaning it just came right down there. And at that point, we said, okay, we can't do anything. Now, this is a NATO and EU member state that is faced with the decision: do we shoot down a Russian fighter bomber that has entered our airspace and is engaged in a hostile action, buzzing a ship in our waters, or do we sort of let them go? We have to deal with things like that because no single member state in the Baltic Sea region, at least, is willing to go Turkish and shoot down a Russian jet. Turks will do it. Well, they will. I mean, that's the difference between us and Turkey is that, and when Turkey does it, that the Russians will not do anything at all because it's Turkey. Now, if Turkey's 90 million people, it has a massive, very good army. The Russians are not going to want to go into that with the Turks. Estonia has 1.3 million people, and I mean, we have the capability to shoot it down. That's not a problem, but what happens the minute after we shoot it down? So we don't. And we don't have a policy. How do we deal with these threats? So that's the first part of the problem. Now, what's the second question was what NATO and...
How we have to change NATO and...
Well, there are a whole series of things. First of all, I think we need a Security Council, a constantly meeting Security Council, or NAC, as in the North Atlantic Council in NATO, that meets every day and no matter what happens. That's what made, there was the North Atlantic Treaty in 1948, but the O, when it was put into NATO, made it an organization that met every single day to look at what's going on in security. We don't have that really with a functional role in the European Union. And because of these things, when they happen, they must be addressed immediately. So EU should do that. It should come up with clear rules on what constitutes a threat that would invoke Article 42.12 or whatever it is. I mean, the solidarity clause of the Lisbon Treaty. And NATO, too, must be able to rearrange or reorganize its understanding of what constitutes a threat from what is currently, basically, it's a threat to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of a NATO member state, but that seems not to include things of the order that I have talked about. I mean, of course, you don't have to change the treaty. You just have to understand how to interpret the treaty, and that has not taken place. On the issue of the United States and its rapidly changing role in NATO, Well, we already saw last spring Hegseth, the Secretary of War, saying that there was a policy paper that was leaked or purposefully leaked to the Washington Post that basically said the Europeans can continue to count upon the nuclear umbrella, but on conventional warfare they have to do it on their own. Which was, I mean, I don't know what the policy is. This was a leaked, Pentagon paper. But we have to, I mean, you know, why doubt it? I mean, we'd basically have to come up with a far more robust approach to conventional warfare. And again, this is something that the Baltic Sea rim countries are all dealing with. But it doesn't seem to have extended far beyond that. I mean, it's a major step that, in fact, Germany now is doing these things, whereas it was not in the past. I mean, Germany was at the forefront of the, bundle to handle approach to Russia. That ended in February 22. And under Merz is getting quite robust about defense and defense spending. But I mean, the rest of Europe does not seem to be overly concerned yet. And I think this is something we have to deal with.
One of the experiences of the Baltic states of Estonia has, of course, been the integration into the EU, the integration into NATO. We now have the test case of Ukraine, and as was reported over the last couple of days, that let me say it mildly, we're not making progress on accession. What is your appreciation of where we are, and how important is it to bring Ukraine into the EU? It looks very unlikely to be brought into NATO, but it would be very good to hear your reflections on
that. Well, if you're not going to get into NATO, then we better get them into the European Union, because at least you're in something that gives some kind of security. If we go back to 2014, recall that the reason why the whole Maidan took place was that Yanukovych went back on his promise to sign something as meaningless, sorry to say, as an association agreement with the European Union. An association agreement is something like all of us signed soon as we could. It took a long, long time to get into the EU, but the association agreement basically is a deep free trade agreement plus student and teacher exchange under Erasmus and Archimedes. That's all it is. Nonetheless, that was considered anathema to Russia. The Russians, in terms of hybrid warfare, sort of misinformation, disinformation, actually got the Netherlands to have something as ridiculous as a referendum on whether or not to give an association agreement, meaningless as it is, to Ukraine. That is how far they were willing to go. So, I mean, membership in the European Union is something that Russia is completely against. When we started our negotiation, the Russians demanded tripartite accession negotiations as former Soviet republics. So it would be Estonia, the Commission, and Russia would be discussing our accession. Well, fortunately, the Commission had enough sort of guts to say, no, go away. But the point is that Russia, it would be a major strategic win for Ukraine to become a member of the European Union. That said, I don't see it happening unless there's a major change on common agricultural policy, because France, Poland, Germany, they will not ever accept the benefits of the common agricultural policy being extended to the breadbasket of Europe. They're just not going to do that. I mean, just to give you an idea how big the opposition is, that we who joined in 2004 only now are sort of asymptotically approaching the level of support given to so-called old member states of the European Union. But the Eastern European so-called new members, who have been new members for 22 years, are still not there, and which strikes us as being bizarre, because you buy a tractor for 250,000 euros, it costs exactly the same in France as it does in Estonia. Seeds cost exactly the same in Germany as they do in Estonia. And labor, our labor costs are basically already up there at the same level as in France and Germany. And besides, what is the cost of labor? What is labor these days in agriculture? It's all automatized, and you have so if that is the approach of Europe to 22-year new members, what is going to be the approach of the European Union to Ukraine? So, how to overcome the opposition of the major cap receiving countries is a huge, huge issue, and I think the biggest one. Now, other ideas, well, we cannot give them cap. That will be a tough swallow. What about phytosanitary controls? It's going to take years for them to reach the level of phytosanitary control regulations that we took years to get to. So, there are these, on the one hand, you have the good intentions of Europe, and on the other hand, you have the reality of the farmers' lobby, all kinds of other lobbies. And so this is one of these places where we're going to need to have a major decision on the part of Europe, balancing the strategic interests of Europe with the economic realities of our member states.
Final question for me, and then I will open it up to the audience as well. But coming back to hybrid warfare, you already mentioned some things we can do. I'm wondering, is there more we can and should do? One thing which strikes me, for example, is yes, we're not going to derail trains in Russia, but what about taking out in cyberspace the Russian bot farms, having actually aggressive actions against these kind of actors as well. And the other question there for me is also the question of how united are we actually in addressing this? Because we now have a situation where we also and I know it's contentious wording, but where we have enemies within, where we have countries which are actually working together with some of these actors. So how do we manage that kind of space?
Well, the last part is the one we'd have to overcome first. How you get Slovakia, Hungary, and maybe soon also the Czechia to agree to a robust approach is beyond me. Short of Article 7 of the treaty, because those are issues that can be vetoed, and I would say maybe even go a step back and say, get rid of the unanimity requirement for foreign security policy. That would be the first step. I think that it's an absurd idea, If you know your history of Poland, it was actually the liberal veto, or the veto liberale, that led to the partitioning of Poland, because the Polish Sejm required unanimity, and one person was against, and basically Poland caved to partition. So we have to get rid of that. How do we deal with those countries? They will block anything, and we have to understand they will. We see Hungary, at least, actively going against European interests by issuing Schengen visas that are not restricted to Hungary. So, you get a Schengen visa from the Hungarian consulate in Petersburg or something, and you go to anywhere in the European Union. We have to deal with, because so much of this stuff is cross-border, we have to somehow get a better handle on Schengen, which is going to be unpopular. I mean, these are all the preliminary steps that we need to take. Now, in terms of when it comes to cyber, the term is active defense. It's almost as crazy as hybrid warfare, but active defense means that you go after them. Now, and no one wants to talk about that. It's clear the United States has done that with regards to the Petersburg bot farms. I don't know what Western Europe is doing. Well, in Eastern Europe, there's maybe a little more, but it requires a huge. Is this Chatham House rule? No. Yes. No. Okay. Never mind. Now, there are cases of some countries taking action, but I won't mention them. All right. Yes. But I mean, that requires a little bit of courage, and it requires a kind of the sort of the old Cold War 50s approach, which basically, if you know the history of the early Cold War, the Russians, or the Sovs, were assassinating people from the intelligence services of the West. And then the intelligence services of the West, I guess primarily the United States, assassinated Russians back until they said, okay, we don't do assassinations. Okay, let's we can do all kinds of other stuff, but no, none of this killing. I mean, I think that's where we're going to have to go. I mean, the problem for a long time was that, for example, the Bundesnachrichtendienst in Germany, their foreign intelligence, basically until about a year ago, didn't want to deal with this at all. I mean, it's not only now becoming clear how much how little Germany was willing to do before. I mean, I guess the best example was that the head of the Bundesnachrichtendienst, Bruno Kahl, discovered that he was in Lviv on February 24th, 2022, and had to be exfiltrated because, it's not only that Germany said, oh, they would never invade, but they also didn't really think they really didn't think they would invade, and suddenly the head of your foreign intelligence organization finds himself in the middle of a country that has been invaded, which is not too good. So, I mean, we have to get. I mean, this requires a change in mindset, I would say, on the part of at least again, old Europe. New Europe, I think. Well, I mean, this is a whole different problem. I mean, you're like, the three Baltic countries and Poland pretty much understand, have been warning about what the Russians are going to do. And the Czechs, until the most recent election, were also very sophisticated on what the Russians are going to do. Hungary, Slovakia have taken a different approach. And now with Babiš in the Czech Republic, who knows what's going to happen? Certainly they don't want to do any more assistance to Ukraine. How that transfers to actual attacks on Europe, I don't know yet, but certainly we cannot count. We can basically assume that if there is any action that Europe wants to take regarding Russia, if it won't be done, it can't be done under unanimity.
To add maybe a little note, uncharacteristically of optimism, let's see what happens in Hungary. At least there's a chance there. So as I said, I wanted to open it up for questions. I'll take 2 or 3. And if you can identify who you are and the organization you represent. And so you first. We've got a microphone.
My name is Paul Christoffersen. I used to be a Danish permanent representative, including when we concluded the enlargement negotiations with Estonia. I have 2 questions which, to some extent, are the same as those that Fabian asked. One is about hybrid warfare. I think you're right that hybrid warfare is a misnomer because it is war. But on the other hand, we look at the repetition of or division of labor between NATO and EU. I mean, it's EU that have the instruments which are mostly needed in what we today call the hybrid warfare. You said that Rutte was not very forthcoming when you addressed him. How about the Commission? How about the new Commissioner for Defense? Don't you see some positive things happening in the thinking inside the Commission? That's one question. My second question is just to follow up on the enlargement with Ukraine. These days, there's a discussion going on. What do we do? Because it is clear that we cannot wait 5, 6, 7 years for enlargement with Ukraine. The question comes up, do we then do another type of enlargement than the one which we have done in the past? Maybe, as we did with Romania and Bulgaria, exclude certain sectors for a number of years. Finally, let me just add one comment on your agricultural preoccupations. Ukraine is not Estonia. Ukraine has large, huge farms. Yes, but that means that you can solve that problem by changing the policy of the EU, giving the same type of income support to all kinds of farmers. That we have been discussing for years. Now it's time to do it.
On the last thing, I completely agree. I think that the common agricultural policy is about 40 years out of date, but yes, but I don't know. I mean, I have no problem with reforming CAP. I think the problem you have to talk to Paris and Warsaw and Berlin on reforming CAP. Not we're ready. I mean, Estonia. 1997, we had 3% of our GDP came from agriculture. It's like, we don't really care. But yes, but you have to talk to those countries. Not. We're always for it. On the well, I was going to say I'm uncharacteristically Estonian, and also being an optimist that. We can, in fact, yes, do something with the Commission, especially with Commissioner Kubilius there, he's been doing great work. I mean, he's been addressing sort of fundamental issues on hard security, because what we've known since already 2014 empirically is that we can't move troops. We can't move armaments in the European Union because we don't have a military Schengen. I mean, it was actually done empirically by General Ben Hodges, who was then the head of U.S. Army Europe, and he wanted to see how long it would take to get tanks from Germany up to Estonia. The problem is that every border you get to, it's like a week-long bureaucratic process. And even though he discovered or sort of proved this in 2014, I mean, in 2026, 12 years later, we still have not solved that, but at least we finally have a commissioner for defense, and the commissioner for defense is actually working on getting a military Schengen. So that's positive. In terms of military action, I don't know. I mean, this has to be addressed by the European Union, by the Council. It has to say, what are we going to do? But right now, I mean, we can be rest assured there will be a Hungarian and Slovak veto, and I don't know how we get around that, unless we do Article 7 or we remove unanimity from common foreign security policy. So that's the second question. What was the other question? Third?
Maybe we'll come back to it.
Okay. Well, we all come back to the same issues anyway, over and over again. That's why it's so boring sometimes, you know.
Just to say also on enlargement and the link to internal reform, I would just recommend a paper by EPC colleagues, Test of Times, which precisely shows the link between the two, and that we cannot have a discussion of one without the other.
That was your question, kind of. I mean, you know, I mentioned in the beginning, but just skipped over it. But the Lammer-Schäuble variable geometry core Europe versus peripheral Europe. It was 1993. That was fundamentally an idea pushed by, characteristically, two Germans, that, you know, we are forced to take these people in. We are forced to take them in because for 45 years we've said, become democracies and you'll join us in Europe. And then you had the 89-91 moment when suddenly they said, oh shit. Now we have to actually live up to our promises. And then you come up with the Copenhagen criteria to make sure it takes a nice long time, because no one ever had to fulfill any so-called Copenhagen criteria before. You know, Greece, Spain, Portugal, they get rid of their autocracies, come on in. Suddenly we want to come in. It's like, oh no, God, we're going to do this. And so then you had the Copenhagen criteria, and it took, well, what did it take? Basically, from 89 to 2004, I mean, that's like 15 years, right, in order for us to, for at least the first tranche, and then it took 13 years for the rest of us. So a variable geometry of 1993 meant to keep us out, or for as long as possible, or even forever, just to have limited sort of EU features. I think we should revise now. I mean, I'm working on this little paper. I don't know if I'll ever get anywhere with it, but basically, we need to have a core Europe defined by common approaches to serious issues, not based on geography, not based on where you were 50 years ago, but based on what you are willing to do today. Are you willing to support unified capital markets? Are you willing to support the full implementation of the Single Markets Act as proposed by Letta? Are you willing to support common borrowing on the part of the European Union? And there will be a core of countries that has nothing to do with whether you're Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Northern or Southern, or maybe a little bit Northern Southern, but okay, we won't get into that. But anyway, a core Europe based on those people, those countries that are willing to go full steam ahead on the Draghi and Letta reports, and the others who are not, well, then you wait.
Especially in certain areas, this is precisely where we've been advocating coalitions of the willing because we do not see that we can move forward with all the countries on board. There, I saw a question there, one there, and then I'll come back hopefully afterwards. If we can keep it into brief questions so we have a chance to get everyone in.
It's a quick question. Laura Béconnier, Vice President of European Action for Ukraine, an organization that is working on mass citizen mobilization to help Ukraine and fight Russia. So my question is simple. We had a very enlightening conversation with Mr. Hofreiter, a member of the German Bundestag, about he confirmed that from a legal standpoint, there is nothing that prevents us to stop Russian shadow fleets. It could already be done today. So other than a lack of courage and mobilization, maybe. So my question is, how can citizens, whether acting on their own or through organizations like Greenpeace, for example, stand up to these shadow fleets and compel the authority to take action and actually stop these ships? And how could Estonia, as a country, support this effort?
We'll take a second one.
Thank you very much. I wanted to come back to the...
You are...
I beg your pardon, sorry, Alison Hunter, Senior Advisor with EPC. I wanted to come back to the issue of the hybrid threat, the EU's new Eastern Border Initiative. Do you see this as being something of a sticking plaster, or is it an opportunity to mobilise a response to the hybrid threat? I'm thinking, first of all, of what are those structural bottlenecks, some of which have already been discussed. But let's be really honest here. Some of this is also about a lack of cooperation within the Baltic Sea region countries themselves.
Really?
And absolutely, I would say they're not always joined at the hip in what they actually want to achieve collectively. And I'm just wondering if there is a possibility to generate a bottom-up response along the eastern border that can then potentially spread to Arctic, to Baltic Sea region and beyond to address this hybrid threat. I'm not particularly confident about it myself, but I wondered what your thoughts on that might be. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this new initiative basically has to do with giving money to the border areas. That's really what it is. It's not more than that as far as I can tell. Secondly, I mean, at least the three Baltic countries are building a common defense. I mean, sort of physically, sort of bunkers all along the border, and I'm not sure where Poland is on that. But I think in terms of basically, I'd say that the 3B and Poland are kind of like on the same wavelength. Finland is moving there. I would argue that the NB8, the Nordic Baltic 8, is actually probably the most cohesive sub-region or regional group there is in the EU today, certainly more than Benelux. I mean, for years we had, well, you people should be like the Benelux. Well, in fact, I think we are far more than Benelux these days, and the NB8 gets, I mean, basically, they talk every day. I mean, the ministers talk every day, and lower down they talk every day, and they all have their signal apps, and they're just, I mean, they are consulting on a level which has never before existed in the European Union, except for perhaps, I don't know, in the halcyon days of the Franco-German motor and planning for the euro or something. But other than that, I mean, it is the one functioning sub-regional or regional grouping in the EU today. And they plan both for EU and for NATO meetings because they're all NATO and EU members. And what is the one country that was not so actively, has not been actively involved in Baltic Sea matters for most of the time, Germany seems to be under Wadafel and Merz is actually undoing a lot of the recalcitrance of the that we've seen since 1989 to 2025. 36 years, yes. Your question. Basically, I don't see any, if I understood the question correctly, I don't actually, first to answer your thing. Also, the hybrid stuff is not happening very much on the border. It's happening far away from the border. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in Poland, central Poland. It's happening in the Baltic Sea, and cables are being cut. So what happens on the border and what is under the purview of the new EU policy has nothing to do with that. From there to your question, I do not see. I mean, if I understood it correctly, I mean, sort of civil society is not going to be able to board shadow fleet tankers. I mean, it has to be done. In order to do it, you need member state military action. I just heard from talking to someone who knows these things that with the recent last week, I guess, Belgian French action on shadow fleet tanker. It was in Belgian waters, but Belgium didn't have the helicopter and rappelling capabilities that the French had, so it became a joint French-Belgian action. We've done some cooperation between Finland and Sweden on similar things like that, but as I said, once the Russians send a Sukhoi bomber into your territory to buzz a shadow fleet tanker to keep the country like mine from bringing it into port, we're in a whole different ballgame. And even if a joint Finnish-Estonian approach, no one's going to go and shoot down a Sukhoi fighter bomber. It has to be a European and or NATO action that shoots it down. I mean, it could be Estonia that shoots it down, but it must be under the EU or NATO, not, Estonia doing it or Latvia doing it or Finland doing it, because that country will, that is a casus belli, and the Russians will invade you. I think that gentleman there had his hand up.
If people are willing to go a couple of minutes over, then I'll keep going. So now more questions are coming. So can you please keep it to 30 seconds each? So we'll start with Amanda.
Amanda Paul from the EPC. My question is actually about Russia. President Putin believes, like his hero Alexander the Great, that great powers shape their neighborhoods. He doesn't think that the EU is a great power, and President Trump has gone off in another direction. So I would like to know your opinion on to what extent can Russia continue this power projection, because it's actually power projection. It doesn't really have that much anymore. The Russian economy is eating itself, if I can put it that way. And on the other hand, is Europe capable of power projection? I mean, they have a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something that's vital for their own security. Are they actually capable of following through and pushing back the Russians and achieving this victory?
A very small question.
Thank you. Lauri Gosing, Estonian PSC ambassador, and pleasure to have you over, President Ilves. Going back to hybrid, you mentioned the acts on European soil. We actually are going to face a bigger problem once the war is over, and that's the 105 million former Russian combatants. Among them 180,000 former prisoners. And of course, entry ban to the EU would be a reasonable step to do, but it's very difficult to convince our Western and Southern partners in the EU that this is actually a threat. So especially the three who are France, Spain and Italy are issuing 95% of the 500,000 Schengen visas. So I seek your advice how to convince our Western and Southern partners that this is an issue.
A final question here, please, very, very brief.
Jiří Hladík, DG Employment of the Commission. Well, very brief. Maybe your colleagues should be asking off stage so that we who actually go back to our jobs after this, have more space to ask questions. I have a greeting, a proposal, a question, and a non-question. The greeting is from Greg Dunn, who is an Australian who lives about a quarter of a century in Tallinn, and he says hi, even though you don't know him yet. Maybe you meet. The non-question, which he advised me, is to play Ilves bingo with you. That's the non-question, so I will not tell you what it is. The proposal, why don't you invite as a observer France to the Baltic States Council, because France is, in my view, the only EU country with a capable army and a global strategy. Compared to Germany, it's obvious. And my question is a bit in connection to Ms. Paul. When this Putin generation dies out, because they are in their 70s, how do you think Russia can evolve for the rest of the century? Thank you.
All right. Where to start? What was the France is an observer member. That's an easy one. How is Russia going to evolve? I'm not sure that the post-Putin generation is that different from the Putin generation. At least that has not been our understanding. On Schengen, on visas, well. ETIAS ETIAS is now coming into effect, and I think that one of the questions should be, if you ever tried to get a visa to the United States? You say, have you ever been a member of the Nazi Party? Well, these days probably not, but they ask you, have you been a member of any of these organizations? And there's a list, and you have to, if you lie, well, then you're in trouble. But basically, you have to put that into a Schengen, the ETIAS system, that when you apply for an electronic visa, which you would need to do to come to the EU, that you answer that question. And I think that, at least to thank the Ukrainians, we have a good enough hackers in Ukraine to know who exactly has been in the Russian army. And so that just simply has to be implemented. And I don't know. Then you have to play hardball with the three countries that issue all the visas and say, okay, we'll block you on something else. I don't know, but we have to do that because we know, just all of the reports of what's going on in Russia with returning so-called veterans, the amount of crime and really horrible crime, killings and all this other stuff, we can't afford to let those people into the EU. On your question, I have no idea where it's going. Where it's going, I don't know how we can't predict anything at this point. Who would have, Western Europe didn't even think that the Russians would invade in 2022. To think of where they will be in 10 years, 20 years, wherever, I cannot, there's no way. Until we resolve the issue of Ukraine, I don't see any ability to have any ideas on where Russia will go. I think they were, if you look at it, they're willing to grind down their economy no matter, and this is like, this is a war of economic attrition, basically. And they will keep going until something happens where, the machine freezes up, right? They're 3.6% sort of decline in GDP in the past year is the latest number. You see, everything is falling apart. I mean, it's kind of like, Phineas Fogg in 80 Days Around the World. I mean, you're at the end and you're throwing everything out because you just have to get that balloon home in time in 80 days. And that's where they are. They're throwing everything out. They're just announced they're going to increase the number of troops to 3 million. I mean, I don't know. What is sustainable? I have no idea.
I think we have to.
I would say only one thing, which is basically on Ukraine. Europe has not fully understood what will happen if the Russians win. I predicted in 2021, when the talk was about they will invade, I said that if they invade, you will get 7 million Ukrainians fleeing, probably, based on the number of people that fled from Eastern Europe in 1944-45. So the same percentage, and it was 7 million. Then ended up primarily in the Baltic countries, Poland, and Germany. There are from the population that existed then, we still have another 35 million Ukrainians. If the Russians succeed, you will, and after Irpin, Bucha, and all of the other horrors that we have seen, I don't know how many people would remain in Ukraine. Maybe the men would stay to fight on and in guerrilla war, but we will face 30 million refugees in Europe. If you think of the disruption that 1.5 million people caused in 2015 as a result of the crisis in Syria and the Middle East, we're talking about 30 million people suddenly flooding in to Europe. And Europe will not face what it will have to deal with if it does not help Ukraine. And which is why I argue you better help Ukraine, because otherwise we will not be able to handle 30 million people coming into the European Union.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry to cut it short, but we've already overrun. And there are many things I think we could have gone into more detail. But that's just also to repeat what I said at the beginning. Please engage with the Northern Europe platform, because that's precisely the kind of discussions which we are trying to have. So thank you very much for coming today. Thank you all for being here. And